and welcome to the Revolutionary Radio Project. I am your host, Rob Skiba, and tonight we're going to do a Virtual House Church Bible Study week number 19. If you want to go to the website, virtualhousechurch.com, scroll down on the left-hand menu to where it says Exodus week 19, Teruma. That's the one we'll be going over tonight. If you have your workbook, you'll be able to follow along on week 19. If you don't have a workbook, you can check out Exodus. We're almost done with Exodus. There's a little advertisement there for the workbook. And, you know, all it is Scripture, just arranged the way you see on the right-hand column there, where it says the Scriptures for this week's study are. And you see, you know, the portion from the Torah, the portion from the prophets, and the portion from the New Testament. It's just laid out as a workbook. If you want to check out what it looks like, you can. There's a link right there. It's just to view a PDF sample of this workbook. Click here. That'll give you an idea what it's like. There's probably about a 10 or 12-page introduction that I wrote, but the rest of it is just all Scripture laid out in accordance with the weekly readings and formatted like a workbook. So about two-thirds of the page is Scripture, and then there's a column on the right-hand side of each page for taking notes, and then some questions at the end of each week's study. It's just three basic starter questions, which are, how does this week's Torah portion relate to the Haftorah and Brit Hadashah portions? The Haftorah is just Hebrew for the portion from the prophets, Brit Hadashah being Hebrew for the New Testament. So how does the portion from the books of Moses relate to the prophets and the New Testament? Is the first question. Second one, what did you find most interesting about this week's reading? And third, what is the general theme of this reading, and how does it apply to our lives today? So they're just real basic questions, really designed to get you thinking, get the conversation started if you're doing this in a home group. And that's really our desire here at the Virtual House Church, is to train you guys up to lead your own house church. It's pretty simple, really. I mean, all we're going to do is read the Scriptures together. I'm going to play audio from BibleGateway.com from the dramatized King James Version. But in a normal setting, we typically read aloud ourselves, and then we just talk about it. You know, it's not a Nicolaitan model where one guy's lording over the people, teaching a hyper-grace message at the expense of the books of Moses, where, you know, in the end of the Gospel of Luke, a couple guys are walking down the street to Emmaus, right? And Yeshua shows up alongside them, and they don't recognize him, and what does he do? He begins with Moses and the prophets and tells them everything in those Scriptures that pertain to him. So, and then afterwards, when their eyes were open, they said, man, did not our hearts burn within us as he opened up the Scriptures to us? And a while back, 4 years ago or so, I longed for that heartburn, that good heartburn. I wanted to know, wait a minute, you know, I'm used to finding Yeshua all over the Gospels and, of course, the New Testament. But the people in the New Testament, their go-to place was the Torah, the prophets, the Psalms. So, you know, I got excited about wanting to go back and find Yeshua in all those things myself. And so that's how we got started. And that's, you know, what our desire is for you, is to find Yeshua in the same thing that he himself used to describe himself. And so we're going to stress the importance of the whole Bible, from Genesis to Revelation. It's one big book. I tore out the commercial interruptions, those man-made pages called Old Testament and New Testament that interrupt the flow of things. So my Bible now goes right from the table of contents right through to the maps with no commercial interruptions there. So we go right from Malachi to Matthew. It's one continuous story. Dispensationalism, I just plain reject it. I used to come from that background, but I don't believe it anymore. And you'll see why, definitely, in the next couple of sessions. And that's one of the reasons why I'm looking forward to doing week 20, because it talks about the breastplate of the high priest and what all that means. And, you know, I'm just going to ask you a question. Are you on the breastplate of our high priest who is in heaven? Because when Yahuwah gave the instructions for the tabernacle and for the priest and all that stuff, he told Moses, he basically gave Moses a blueprint of something that's in heaven to duplicate what's in heaven here on earth. So our high priest in heaven, apparently has some interesting connections with the priests here on earth. We would say that he is a priest in the order of Melchizedek, which is a higher priestly order that replaced the Levitical order. If you read Hebrews chapter 4 through 8, it tells you that specifically. So, I mean, the question is, are you on the breastplate? Are you going to be able to go in one of the gates of the New Jerusalem, or Revelation 21? Something to think about. So we'll be looking at all that stuff. And it's not going to be just me doing all the talking. At least that's not the way I want it to be. I'm doing a little intro now, and I'll give some more commentary as we go along. But really, I want to hear from you. That means you got to call me at 619-789-6815. And the way a typical house church works is we look at the scriptures together, and then we just discuss them. Why? Because you're going to have insights that I don't have, and somebody else might have insights that neither one of us have, and I might have a few that you don't have. And together, we can reason from the scriptures and learn something. And you know what's cool about that, too? And again, I'm going to contrast that to the Nicolaitan model that most of us are used to. Most of us grew up in the environment where there's one guy doing all the talking, everybody else listens. You can't raise your hand in the middle of the service and say, hey, Pastor, have you ever considered this? Or, I'm not so sure that's what that's talking about. Or, man, that's an awesome insight, Pastor. Have you ever considered this? You can't do that. You'll be politely escorted out of the church if you do that. So I don't like that model at all. But what's cool about the house church model is that there is really a checks and balance in place. Many of our parents and perhaps ourselves grew up in this environment where, the whole family goes to one church and they stay in that church for 20, 30 years, die, and, the next generation continues in the same church. And I say, that's great, that's cool, it's a lot of good community and all of that, but what if that guy is wrong? What if what everybody's sitting under is wrong? There's not a whole lot of checks and balance in the Nicolaitan model. There's one guy lording over everybody else. If you don't like it, you leave, or you get kicked out if you disagree. Whereas in the house church, there is a checks and balance, and there's different levels of spiritual maturity. A lot of times, you'll have some people that will attend that are very young in the Lord. They've only recently accepted Yeshua as their Lord and Savior, and so they may be spiritually immature and may come up with things that may be incorrect or off the wall or whatever. But there will be others there who are much more mature in the faith, and they can lovingly correct such people. But on the other side, sometimes these people who come in for the first time and they're young, they just have that new believer zeal, excitement, and they're getting revelation like crazy. And some of us that have, the old wine and old wineskin kind of thing going on, sometimes these newbies can really throw a zinger or two, and you have to think about it and say, but that's an interesting thing, brother. Let me go check it out. And maybe they're right, maybe they're wrong. But point is, everybody has something to share. There is a checks and balance in place, and we want to encourage that. Not only for the fact of the added revelation that you can get in that kind of environment and the excitement of sharing with one another, but also quite frankly, the harsh reality is we may end up in that model whether we like it or not before too long. When I was a missionary with an international missions organization, we specialized in going to what they called restricted access countries where less than 2% of the population even have any idea or have ever even heard of the name of Jesus Christ or Yeshua. And in those environments, you can only have a house church, an underground house church at that. You can't go set up a building because the government will come after you if you do. And, I hate to say it, but we may find ourselves in that kind of scenario here in the United States before too long ourselves. So you might as well get used to the house church model. And, in lieu of having one that you can go to right now, we have provided the virtual house church. But as much as I love you guys here and I want you to come here, I appreciate you guys coming here. I hope more will come here. Our ultimate goal is to train you to go and do it yourself. Start one at your own home. After you've heard us for about a year, every year we get more insights and all that stuff, but we're really just doing the same thing year after year. and learning more and more as we go along. And you're welcome to join us, of course. But get together, forsake not the assembling together of yourselves with other brethren, because there's just something about the one-on-one personal contact where you can sit in front of somebody face-to-face, talk with them, hear what they're going through, pray for them, lay hands on them, anoint them with oil, pray over them, sing together with them. All that kind of stuff is very important, and we all need it. So hopefully you'll kind of get an idea how to do it here. And I'm not by any means saying this is the way you have to do it. We're just trying to model one way of doing it so you can start doing it on your own. Okay, I've been rambling long enough. Let's go ahead and get started. What I usually do is play what's called a Parsha in 60 seconds. There's a ministry out there on YouTube that they distill the entire Torah portion down to 60 seconds, kind of a preview, if you will. And I find them pretty cool and helpful, and you can watch the video on the show page there for week 19, but I'm going to go ahead and play the audio for it now, and then we'll get started. So here we go.
Shalom and welcome to Parsha in 60 seconds. Today's portion is from Exodus 25:1 through 27:19. It is called Truma, which means gift or offering. It was time to build the tabernacle. The Israelites gave God many gifts for this project. The Ark of the Covenant was crafted with acacia wood and overlaid with gold. The tablets were placed inside. 2 cherubim of gold were placed on the Ark's cover, or mercy seat. God promised to speak the commandments to Moses from between the 2 cherubim above the cover of the Ark. A gold table was made with a crown for displaying bread. 1 6-branched and 7-lamp stand of pure gold was crafted. The tabernacle was crafted with 10 stripes of fine twisted linen of blue, purple, and crimson yarns, with a design of cherubim worked into them. 11 cloths of goat's hair made a tent over the tabernacle. Planks, curtains for the Holy of Holies, an altar, and other enclosures were crafted for the tabernacle. God instructed every little detail down to the last thread of everything. And that is Truma in 60 seconds.
There you go. That's a snapshot of what we're going to be covering tonight. Of course, like they said in the Parsha in 60 seconds, we'll be looking at Exodus 25:1 through 27:19. Then we'll look in the prophets portion. It will be 1 Kings 5:12 through 6:13. And in the New Testament, Matthew chapter 5:33 through 37, and Hebrews 8:1 through 6, 9:23 through 24, and 10:1. So let's go ahead and get started with the Torah portion. Here we go.
Chapter 25. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, that they bring me an offering. Of every man that giveth it willingly, with his heart ye shall take my offering. And this is the offering which ye shall take of them: gold, and silver, and brass, and blue, and purple, and scarlet, and fine linen, and goat's hair, and ram skins dyed red, and badger skins, and shittim wood, oil for the light, spices for anointing oil, and for sweet incense, onyx stones, and stones to be set in the ephod, and in the breastplate. And let them make me a sanctuary, that I may dwell among them, according to all that I show thee, after the pattern of the tabernacle, and the pattern of all the instruments thereof. Even so shall ye make it. And they shall make an ark of shittim wood. 2 cubits and a half shall be the length thereof, and 1 cubit and a half the breadth thereof, and 1 cubit and a half the height thereof. And thou shalt overlay it with pure gold. Within and without shalt thou overlay it, and shalt make upon it a crown of gold round about. And thou shalt cast 4 rings of gold for it, and put them in the 4 corners thereof. And 2 rings shall be in the one side of it, and 2 rings in the other side of it. And thou shalt make staves of shittim wood, and overlay them with gold. And thou shalt put the staves into the rings by the sides of the ark, that the ark may be borne with them. The staves shall be in the rings of the ark. They shall not be taken from it. And thou shalt put into the ark the testimony which I shall give thee. And thou shalt make a mercy seat of pure gold. 2 cubits and a half shall be the length thereof, and 1 cubit and a half the breadth thereof. And thou shalt make 2 cherubims of gold. Of beaten work shalt thou make them in the 2 ends of the mercy seat. And make 1 cherub on the one end, and the other cherub on the other end. even of the mercy seat shall ye make the cherubims on the two ends thereof. And the cherubims shall stretch forth their wings on high, covering the mercy seat with their wings, and their faces shall look one to another. Toward the mercy seat shall the faces of the cherubims be. And thou shalt put the mercy seat above upon the ark, and in the ark thou shalt put the testimony that I shall give thee. And there I will meet with thee, and I will commune with thee from above the mercy seat, from between the two cherubims which are upon the ark of the testimony, of all things which I will give thee in commandment unto the children of Israel. Thou shalt also make a table of shittim wood. 2 cubits shall be the length thereof, and a cubit the breadth thereof, and a cubit and a half the height thereof. And thou shalt overlay it with pure gold, and make thereto a crown of gold round about. And thou shalt make unto it a border of an handbreadth round about, and thou shalt make a golden crown to the border thereof round about. And thou shalt make for it 4 rings of gold, and put the rings in the 4 corners that are on the 4 feet thereof. Over against the border shall the rings be for places of the staves to bear the table. And thou shalt make the staves of shittim wood, and overlay them with gold, that the table may be borne with them. And thou shalt make the dishes thereof, and spoons thereof, and covers thereof, and bowls thereof, to cover withal, of pure gold shalt thou make them. And thou shalt set upon the table showbread before me alway. And thou shalt make a candlestick of pure gold, of beaten work shall the candlestick be made. His shaft, and his branches, his bowls, his knops, and his flowers shall be of the same. And 6 branches shall come out of the sides of it, 3 branches of the candlestick out of the one side, and 3 branches of the candlestick out of the other side. 3 bowls made like unto almonds, with a knop and a flower in one branch, and 3 bowls made like almonds in the other branch, with a knop and a flower. So in the 6 branches that come out of the candlestick, and in the candlestick shall be 4 bowls made like unto almonds, with their knops and their flowers. And there shall be a knop under 2 branches of the same, and a knop under 2 branches of the same, and a knop under 2 branches of the same, according to the 6 branches that proceed out of the candlestick. Their knops and their branches shall be of the same. All it shall be one beaten work of pure gold. And thou shalt make the 7 lamps thereof, and they shall light the lamps thereof, that they may give light over against it. And the tongs thereof, and the snuff dishes thereof, shall be of pure gold. Of a talent of pure gold shall he make it, with all these vessels. And look that thou make them after their pattern, which was showed thee in the mount. Chapter 26. Moreover, thou shalt make the tabernacle with 10 curtains of fine twined linen, and blue, and purple, and scarlet. With cherubims of cunning work shalt thou make them. The length of one curtain shall be 28 cubits, and the breadth of one curtain 4 cubits. And every one of the curtains shall have one measure. The 5 curtains shall be coupled together, one to another, and other 5 curtains shall be coupled one to another. And thou shalt make loops of blue upon the edge of the one curtain, from the selvage in the coupling. And likewise shalt thou make in the uttermost edge of another curtain, in the coupling of the second. 50 loops shalt thou make in the one curtain, and 50 loops shalt thou make in the edge of the curtain that is in the coupling of the second, that the loops may take hold one of another. And thou shalt make 50 tacks of gold, and couple the curtains together with the tacks, and it shall be one tabernacle. And thou shalt make curtains of goat's hair, to be a covering upon the tabernacle. 11 curtains shalt thou make. The length of one curtain shall be 30 cubits, and the breadth of one curtain 4 cubits. And the 11 curtains shall be all of one measure. And thou shalt couple 5 curtains by themselves, and 6 curtains by themselves, and shalt double the 6th curtain in the forefront of the tabernacle. And thou shalt make 50 loops on the edge of the one curtain that is outmost in the coupling, and 50 loops in the edge of the curtain which coupleth the second. And thou shalt make 50 tacks of brass, and put the tacks into the loops, and couple the tent together, that it may be one. And the remnant that remaineth of the curtains of the tent, the half curtain that remaineth, shall hang over the backside of the tabernacle. And a cubit on the one side, and a cubit on the other side of that which remaineth in the length of the curtains of the tent, it shall hang over the sides of the tabernacle, on this side and on that side to cover it. And thou shalt make a covering for the tent of ram skins dyed red, and a covering above of badger skins. And thou shalt make boards for the tabernacle of shittim wood standing up. 10 cubits shall be the length of a board, and 1.5 cubits shall be the breadth of one board. 2 tenons shall there be in one board, set in order one against another. Thus shalt thou make for all the boards of the tabernacle. And thou shalt make the boards for the tabernacle 20 boards on the south side southward. And thou shalt make 40 sockets of silver under the 20 boards, 2 sockets under one board for his 2 tenons, and 2 sockets under another board for his 2 tenons. And for the second side of the tabernacle on the north side there shall be 20 boards, and there 40 sockets of silver, 2 sockets under one board, and 2 sockets under another board. And for the sides of the tabernacle westward thou shalt make 6 boards. And 2 boards shalt thou make for the corners of the tabernacle in the 2 sides, and they shall be coupled together beneath, and they shall be coupled together above the head of it unto one ring. Thus shall it be for them both. They shall be for the 2 corners. And they shall be 8 boards, and their sockets of silver 16 sockets, 2 sockets under one board, and 2 sockets under another board. And thou shalt make bars of shittim wood, 5 for the boards of the one side of the tabernacle, and 5 bars for the boards of the other side of the tabernacle, and 5 bars for the boards of the side of the tabernacle, for the 2 sides westward. And the middle bar in the midst of the board shall reach from end to end. And thou shalt overlay the boards with gold, and make their rings of gold for places for the bars. And thou shalt overlay the bars with gold. And thou shalt rear up the tabernacle according to the fashion thereof, which was showed thee in the mount. And thou shalt make a veil of blue, and purple, and scarlet, and fine twined linen of cunning work. With cherubim shall it be made. And thou shalt hang it upon 4 pillars of shittim wood overlaid with gold. Their hooks shall be of gold upon the 4 sockets of silver. And thou shalt hang up the veil under the tacks, that thou mayest bring in thither within the veil the ark of the testimony. And the veil shall divide unto you between the holy place and the most holy. And thou shalt put the mercy seat upon the ark of the testimony in the most holy place. And thou shalt set the table without the veil, and the candlestick over against the table on the side of the tabernacle toward the south. And thou shalt put the table on the north side. And thou shalt make an hanging for the door of the tent of blue and purple and scarlet, and fine twined linen, wrought with needlework. And thou shalt make for the hanging 5 pillars of shittim wood, and overlay them with gold, and their hooks shall be of gold. And thou shalt cast 5 sockets of brass for them. Chapter 27. And thou shalt make an altar of shittim wood, 5 cubits long, and 5 cubits broad. The altar shall be 4 square, and the height thereof shall be 3 cubits. And thou shalt make the horns of it upon the 4 corners thereof. His horn shall be of the same. And thou shalt overlay it with brass. And thou shalt make his pans to receive his ashes, and his shovels, and his basins, and his flesh hooks, and his fire pans. All the vessels thereof thou shalt make of brass. And thou shalt make for it a grate of network of brass. And upon the net shalt thou make 4 brassen rings in the 4 corners thereof. And thou shalt put it under the compass of the altar beneath, that the net may be even to the midst of the altar. And thou shalt make staves for the altar, staves of shittim wood, and overlay them with brass. And the staves shall be put into the rings, and the staves shall be upon the 2 sides of the altar to bear it. Hollow with boards shalt thou make it. As it was showed thee in the mount, so shall they make it. And thou shalt make the court of the tabernacle. For the south side southward there shall be hangings for the court of fine twined linen, of 100 cubits long for one side. And the 20 pillars thereof, and their 20 sockets shall be of brass. The hooks of the pillars, and their fillets shall be of silver. And likewise for the north side in length there shall be hangings of 100 cubits long, and his 20 pillars, and their 20 sockets of brass, the hooks of the pillars, and their fillets of silver. And for the breadth of the court on the west side shall be hangings of 50 cubits, their pillars 10, and their sockets 10. And the breadth of the court on the east side eastward shall be 50 cubits. The hangings of one side of the gate shall be 15 cubits, their pillars 3, and their sockets 3. And on the other side shall be hangings 15 cubits, their pillars 3, and their sockets 3. And for the gate of the court shall be an hanging of 20 cubits, of blue and purple and scarlet, and fine twined linen, wrought with needlework. and their pillars shall be 4, and their sockets 4. All the pillars round about the court shall be filleted with silver. Their hooks shall be of silver, and their sockets of brass. The length of the court shall be 100 cubits, and the breadth 50, everywhere. And the height 5 cubits of fine twined linen, and their sockets of brass. All the vessels of the tabernacle, and all the service thereof, and all the pins thereof, and all the pins of the court shall be of brass.
All right, that concludes our Torah portion. A lot of detail there regarding the tabernacle. And if you want to see more information on that, it's on the show page from last year's study. Go to virtualhousechurch.com. Left-hand menu, scroll down, Exodus Week 19. And if you scroll down to below where it says 2013 broadcast, you'll see a bunch of links there, and then you'll see some pictures. The tabernacle in the wilderness, you can click on them to enlarge. It shows you what the tabernacle actually looked like and how it was laid out and all that really pretty cool stuff. So you can check that out. If you have anything that you would like to contribute, give me a call, 619-789-6815. I'd love to hear from you if you have any insights, 619-789-6815. Otherwise, I'm going to read a commentary that was written by an individual named Ardell. I did that last year, found some really cool stuff. Check out Ardell's commentaries at yourlivingwaters.com, and I believe I read the commentary last year from 2008, the 2008 commentary. So this year I'm going to read the commentary that Ardell wrote on this portion in 2009. Let's see, I'm reading it for the first time too, so we'll learn together. Ardell says, Exodus 25 ushers in a whole new section of the Torah centered on the tabernacle. We will read very detailed information, including the construction of the portable structure, its furnishings and implements, designation of the priesthood, their duties and their garments, instructions for acceptable sacrifices, and special meeting times. Although these details will consume 50 chapters in Exodus and Leviticus, the Torah covered the entire creation account in 2 chapters. That should be something for us to think about. And, you know, it is really interesting to me. I'm just going to back up and read a couple of notes that I had written in my notebook. Exodus 25, verse 2, first of all, it starts off with, Speak unto the children of Israel that they bring me an offering. Of every man that giveth it willingly with his heart, ye shall take my offering. So it wasn't mandatory. He asked people to give, and the people did. You know, at this point, everybody's pretty excited. You know, they had been delivered from Egypt. They'd gone through the Red Sea. You know, they're camping out at the base of this mountain. Moses is going up. God's up there. You know, it's a pretty exciting deal going on. And this is really a marriage taking place where it's marriage terms where God says, I'll be their God and they will be my people. And God's basically saying, hey, this is the house we're going to build. You know, and I'm going to hang out with you guys. We see that in verse 8 and 9. And let them make me a sanctuary that I may dwell among them. I mean, our husband is like, hey, build a house. As soon as you get it all right, I'm going to come down there and I'm going to live among you. I'm going to dwell with you. Here's the deal, Moses. I'm going to show you something. It says in verse 9, according to all that I show thee, after the pattern of the tabernacle and the pattern of all the instruments thereof, even so shall ye make it. So God is showing Moses a blueprint of something that is in existence, apparently, in heaven, and presumably for eternity. Eternity past, our current present, and as well as in the future. This is the way things are laid out in heaven, and he's like, I want you to mirror it for me here on earth, and once you get it all built up, I'm going to hang out with you guys, and it's going to be basically just, you know, this is my paraphrase inserting some stuff here, but as I read this, it's like it's going to be just like it was back in the Garden of Eden, where God walked and talked with Adam in the cool of the day. I mean, let that sink in. I mean, really, let it sink in. God says, here's the blueprint. Model this after something that's already apparently in heaven, and once you get it done, I am going to hang out with you. God, the creator of the universe, is going to come and dwell among them. And people had the privilege of giving whatever they wanted and whatever they had, I guess, toward this building project. We'll see later that when Bezalel is tasked with building all this stuff, the people gave so much that I mean, when does this ever happen in ministry? Okay, having been in ministry, in some form of ministry, basically my entire life, I can tell you this never happens in the 20th and 21st century. That the guys doing the work actually had to tell Moses, hey, dude, this is my paraphrase, of course, dude, tell the people to stop. Tell the people to stop giving. We have more than enough to complete the task. When has that ever happened? Everybody I know in ministry is like always begging for money because, you know what, and I can tell you this is the truth, having been a missionary for 6.5 years, traveled over a dozen countries, it is a global statistic that only 4% of the church finances the whole thing, globally. Man, I so long for the day when people, you know, we have the King of the universe living inside of us. We are his tabernacle now. You, me, if you believe in Yeshua as your Lord and Savior, he's taken up residence in you. You are now the tabernacle of God. So we're a bunch of tabernacles walking around. But, that Christians would get behind the work of God and say, you know what, I'm going to give willingly to whatever it is that you think is worthy of sowing into, so that those who are on the front lines doing the work would have to say, whoa, man, stop, please stop. You're giving so much I can't take it anymore. We got more than enough to do what we have to do. Wow. How, totally amazing would that be if that could actually happen. But, apparently it happened here with the tabernacle in the wilderness. God says, ask the people to give. People give. Moses, build this thing just like it is here in heaven, and I am going to come and hang out with you. In verse 16, and thou shalt put into the ark the testimony which I shall give thee. So the ark is also eternal, as is the Ten Commandments. The Ten Commandments is not something God just made up when Moses went up to the top of the mountain. He said, I'm going to give you something, and it's going to go inside the ark, which is you're going to make it after something that's in heaven. It's eternal. This thing called the Ten Commandments is eternal. It didn't pass away or didn't get nailed to the cross. We don't need to do it anymore. Now, let me clarify. We are not saved by the works of the law. You cannot, do anything to earn your salvation. It is a free gift that we receive by grace through faith in Christ alone. It is not of works, lest any of us should boast, okay? It's a free gift. I get it. I understand it. But once we get that free gift, it says in Hebrews chapter 8, verse 10, that he writes it on our heart. And that's actually a quote from Jeremiah. He writes his law on our heart. So, people get all upset whenever I talk about, hey, maybe we should, actually obey God. People flip out on me. Don't get me under the law. Well, wait a minute. If you're a believer, the law is supposed to be, because you are now the tabernacle, right? Where was the law? The law was in the ark of the testimony inside the tabernacle. Well, the ark now, I guess, is our heart, because that's where he goes. He sits on the mercy seat, right, which is the cover of the ark. And inside the ark are the Ten Commandments, which is why when he said, okay, I'm gonna make you guys the tabernacle, I'm going to now write what I wrote with my own finger in stone. I am now going to write it in flesh. I'm going to write it on your heart. So if you are a believer in Yeshua, and he's taken up residence inside of you, Holy Spirit's inside of you, the law is written on your heart, you're not under the law. The law is in you. How can you be under something if it's in you? And I say to people all the time, do you really want to have other gods besides Yahuwah? Do you really want to, make idols? Do you really want to take his name in vain? And I know some people aren't big on the Sabbath, but the Sabbath is also eternal. And you know what? You're missing out if you're not partaking in it. Let me just say this: you're not going to go to hell if you don't do it. If you're worshiping on Sunday, great. I have no problem with that. I don't think God does either, because we're supposed to worship him in spirit and in truth all the time. So worship God every day. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Worship him every day. But the Sabbath is still the Sabbath. We're supposed to remember it. Keep it holy. And what does it boil down to? Rest. I'll tell you what, as soon as we started doing it, man, we've experienced enormous blessing in our life. And I'm speaking as a workaholic, okay? I could work nonstop. Sometimes I get annoyed that I actually have to eat and, use the bathroom, okay? So, the Sabbath thing has been great for me because it's forced me, dude, Rob, stop, okay? Chill out, rest, hang out, with your friends and family, and just spend time with me and relax a little bit, okay? And, man, it's been awesome. And we've had different people in our group, in our normal house church, that have desired to keep the Sabbath, but have had difficulty because of their job. And some of you have heard this testimony before, but one of the guys, he's he's self-employed, and he's like, I do my best, most of my business, Friday evening and Saturday and over the weekend. So, stopping work Friday night at sunset and not working on Saturday, he's like, I don't think I can do it. And I told him, I said, dude, look, God knows your heart. If your desire is to truly obey him and to do Bible things in Bible ways, if you want to keep the Sabbath, just give it to him. Give it to God. Say, Lord, this is how I make my living. This is how I eat and pay the bills. And most of my business comes on Friday evening and Saturday. But Father, I want to obey you, so I'm going to trust you and I'm going to give you the Sabbath. Well, he did that. And he came the following week, and he was jacked out of his mind, excited, because God had doubled or tripled his business in the days prior to Friday, that more than compensated for whatever he would normally make Friday night and Saturday. And he came back consistently giving that testimony. And then later, where he had some situation come up where he needed some money for something, and he's low or whatever, God blessed him, and there was a situation where I guess some people figured out that they had overpaid him a long time ago or something like that. I don't remember what it was. But they said, hey, we want to make it right. And this came totally out of the blue. And, they paid what they had apparently not paid earlier or something, and it was what he needed. So God blesses. We had another couple that we prayed over this past weekend that she's works for, I think, for an airline, and really wanted to be able to not work on Saturday. So we just prayed that she would find a favor, that she would get promoted or whatever it took for the schedule to work out such that she could do what she wanted to do, which was keep the fourth commandment. And I'll say that to you out there, too. If you're listening, look, give it a shot. What do you got to lose? Okay? You got tremendous blessing to gain. He actually says this is a sign between us and him. So, that's a good thing. You want to be identified with him. He wants to be identified with you. He wants you to rest. He wants you to have peace. He wants to bless you. He wants to have a date with you. This is a date night with God. He says, hey, bride, this is the day I want to meet with you. He meets with us every day. I get it. But that's a special date that he wants to have with us. So if your desire is to meet God on that special date, and you have difficulty with work or whatever, just pray and say, Father, you know what? I'm going to pray for you right now. Father Yahuwah, I thank you for making it possible, first of all, for Sheila and I to be able to experience your Sabbath rest and to learn from you on this special day that you have set apart from the week of creation, where you created the whole universe in 6 days, and on the seventh day you rested it, and you sanctified it, made that day holy, and then later commanded your people to remember it and to set it apart and to rest with you on that day. And, Father, as I understand it, you've even programmed our bodies to go into a rejuvenative state of slowing down of some of our processes and whatnot for our body to actually go through a rest cycle beginning on Friday night, as I understand it. Regardless, Father, I am thankful for your Sabbath, and there may be people out there who are struggling that want to keep your Sabbath but feel that they can't because they're locked into some sort of commitment, whether it be with a job or what have you. Father, I just pray that you will work in each and every one of your people's heart and in their situation, that they may find favor with their employer, or if they're self-employed, that they may experience what Don experienced with his business, and that they will be able to truly walk in your ways and experience your Sabbath rest, Father. I just pray this favor over anybody and everybody who is listening to this broadcast, whether live or in the archive, that desires to keep the fourth commandment. Pray that you will make a way where there may seem that there is no way, because I know you can do that, Father. And I just want to thank you and praise you for your Sabbath, for your commandments, for your scriptures from Genesis to Revelation. We praise you, Father, in Yeshua's name. Amen. All right, so, if you really want to keep the fourth commandment, there you go. That's where he wants to meet us, and he says in chapter 25, verse 21, and you shall put the mercy seat upon the ark, and in the ark thou shalt put the testimony that I shall give thee. And, this is one of those things where it comes to the Ten Commandments, like, look, God actually wrote it with his own finger. Now, I understand that all Scripture is divinely inspired by the Holy Spirit, and, it's profitable for doctrine, reproof, correction, all that. I understand that. But those Scriptures that were inspired by the Holy Spirit were written by the hand of man. The Ten Commandments was written by the finger of God. I like the way one person describes it as like, can you imagine like this finger writing in marble or whatever the stone was and just carving it like butter? Like if you got a big old tub of butter and you start putting your finger in it and start writing, he wrote in stone with his finger. I would say that's kind of important. In verse 22, and there I will meet with thee, and I will commune with thee from above the mercy seat, from between the two cherubims which are upon the ark of the testimony of all things, which I will give thee in commandment unto the children of Israel. Man, it's so cool. And if you've ever seen Raiders of the Lost Ark, that's a pretty good depiction of what the ark may have looked like. Although I don't think that the two, I've seen other depictions of the cherubim where, like in the movie, they have both wings kind of covering over the top of the ark. But it's a mercy seat. It was basically a throne. And I've seen other depictions of it where it shows sort of their back arms and wings extended towards each other, forming the back of like a chair, and their front wing and arm is kind of down, so it's kind of pointing toward the floor, so it forms sort of the side of the chair. So if you can imagine somebody, with one arm, if you're facing straight ahead, and you got one arm, let's say your right arm, facing straight ahead, and then you have your left arm kind of going straight out to your side and down. So it forms like a chair. It's a seat. It's the mercy seat. It's a chair. So I've seen depictions like that. I don't know for sure, but I think that's the way it probably was, seeing that it was a chair, a mercy seat. Okay, anyway, let me go back to what Ardell was saying here. Specific instruction in special times. Although these details will consume 50 chapters in Exodus and Leviticus, the Torah covered the entire creation in 2 chapters. So that tells us something. I mean, creation, you think about the universe, look out to the farthest reaches of space. We got Hubble space telescopes and stuff. Man, the universe is pretty amazing, but he wrote about all that in like a couple of pages, if that, a couple of chapters in Genesis, and yet he spends 50 chapters discussing the tabernacle, the sacrifices, the implements, all the things that go into it, the Ark of the Covenant, all that. 50 chapters. Think it might be kind of important? I do. There were 15 chapters dedicated to the life of Abraham, considered to be the father of our faith. Obviously, these details are very important to Yahuwah, and our first thought should therefore be that these details must point to the Messiah. Yeshua even implied this in John 5:46. For if you believed Moses, you would believe me, for he wrote about me. Everything in the tabernacle does point to Yeshua in one way or another, and it will also be helpful for us to keep in mind the following concept. Messiah is not just a head. He has a body, and we are his body. 1 Corinthians 12:27 says, now you are the body of the Messiah, the members individually. Not only are we individual tabernacles housing the Messiah, 2 Corinthians 5:1. For we know that if our earthly house, this tent, is destroyed, we have a building from Elohim, a house not made with hands, eternal in the heavens. 2 Corinthians 1:22. Who also has sealed us and given us the Spirit in our hearts as a guarantee. We are also being unified in order to become a tabernacle of believers with Yeshua as our head. Peter 2:5. You also, as living stones, are being built up a spiritual house, a holy priesthood, to offer up spiritual sacrifices acceptable to Adonai through Messiah Yeshua. Last week, at the end of Parashat Mishpatim, that's the name of the study we did last week, Yahuwah summoned Moses back to the top of Mount Sinai. And Exodus 19 had already described his incredible presence on the mountain. But now we notice an additional word being used to describe his presence in Exodus 24, beginning of verse 15. Then Moses went up into the mountain, and a cloud covered the mountain. And now the glory of Yahuwah rested on Mount Sinai, and the cloud covered it 6 days. And on the seventh day he called to Moses out of the midst of the cloud. The sight of the glory of Yahuwah was like a consuming fire on the top of the mountain in the eyes of the children of Israel. The account says that he rested on Mount Sinai. The term will be repeated in chapter 25, where we read of the longing of the Almighty as he again desires to shekan, now translated as dwell in the midst of his people, Exodus 25:8. And let them make me a sanctuary that I may dwell among them. Later, we will again make the connection between Mount Sinai and the tabernacle as Yahuwah, as his glory, descends on the complete structure in a manner consistent with the glory of Mount Sinai, that he might rest or dwell among them. Exodus 40, beginning in verse 34. Then the cloud covered the tabernacle of meeting, and the glory of Yahuwah filled the tabernacle. And Moses was not able to enter the tabernacle of meeting because the cloud rested above it, and the glory of Yahuwah filled the tabernacle. Whenever the cloud was taken up from above the tabernacle, the children of Israel would go onward in all their journeys. But if the cloud was not taken up, then they did not journey till the day that it was taken up. For the cloud of Yahuwah was above the tabernacle by day, and fire was over it by night, in the sight of all the house of Israel, throughout all their journeys. We are so familiar with the words of John that we may have missed that the glory of the Almighty came down from heaven in order to dwell among us. John 1:14. And the Word became flesh and dwelt, shekan, among us, and we beheld his glory, and glory as of the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth. The Bible shows us a preview of the future redemption as his desire to dwell among all his people will be fulfilled in the tabernacle of the Almighty. Revelation 21:3. And I heard a loud voice from heaven saying, Behold, the tabernacle of Yah is with men, and he will dwell, shekan, with them, and they shall be his people. Yah himself will be with them and be their Adonai. Moses was commanded to use the pattern of the heavenly tabernacle to build an earthly structure. It had to be exact in order to allow the Almighty's holy presence, the Shekinah glory, the same glory that descended on Mount Sinai, to dwell, shekan, in its midst. Notice that this description of the tabernacle is exactly how we could describe Yeshua, an earthly representation of the divine presence that descended and dwelt among us. Awesome. This is why there are 50 chapters devoted to the tabernacle and everything associated with it. The tabernacle is a picture of Yeshua and those connected to him, Yeshua and his body, his purified bride. All these commands, then, are more than just details. They are instructions for order in our lives. They are a plan showing us how we can invite the presence of Yeshua to dwell, shekan, in our midst, both individually and as a body. We too have come out of Egypt, but we're not yet in the promised land. We must pay attention to these instructions and build our tabernacles. Okay, let's see what we can learn from some of the details in our study. We begin with an emphasis on the voluntary nature of the gifts required for the tabernacle, for the building of the tabernacle in Exodus 25:1. Then Yahuwah spoke to Moses, saying, verse 2, speak to the children of Israel that they bring me an offering. From everyone who gives it willingly with his heart, you shall make my offering. Giving from the heart is foundational as construction for the tabernacle begins. It is absolutely essential that the givers/builders are unified in their vision and goal. Rabbi Jonathan Sachs points out, see, I'm just going to say Jonathan Sachs. We're not supposed to call anybody rabbi. I don't like it when people do that. So some guy named Jonathan Sachs points out how lack of willingness of the heart and disunity in building results in kingdom division. His point is made by moving forward 500 years and studying the events surrounding the building of the temple during the time of King Solomon. We know that King Solomon asked for wisdom and was granted his request in 1 Kings 4, verse 29. And Elohim gave Solomon wisdom and exceedingly great understanding and largeness of incredible economic wealth. The building of the temple was seen as the completion of the exodus from Egypt. 1 Kings 6:1 says, and it came to pass in the 480th year after the children of Israel had come out of the land of Egypt, in the 4th year of Solomon's reign over Israel, in the month of Ziv, which is the 2nd month, that he began to build the house of Yahuwah. Yet, despite his incredible achievements, Solomon failed as a king. He made several bad decisions, including the accumulation of horses and the taking of hundreds of wives. After his death, the kingdom divided. 10 tribes left the kingdom under Jeroboam, the Ephraimite, and Solomon's son, Rehoboam, was left with the remaining 2 tribes. Under apparently good times, how was Jeroboam able to succeed? At a time when the nation was flourishing and at peace, how was Jeroboam able to pull off a rebellion that gained him 10 tribes? The answer lies in the impact and building of the temple that it had on its workers. Read what the Bible tells us and let your heart sense the differences between the building of the tabernacle versus the building of the temple. 1 Kings 5, beginning of verse 13. Then King Solomon raised up a labor force out of all Israel, and the labor force was 30,000 men. And he sent them to Lebanon, 10,000 a month in shifts. They were 1 month in Lebanon and 2 months at home. Adoniram was in charge of the labor force. Solomon had 70,000 who carried burdens and 80,000 who quarried stone in the mountains. Besides were 3,300 from the chiefs of Solomon's deputies who supervised them, the people who labored in their work. Later, we are informed that it was this burden that agitated the people after Solomon died. In 1 Kings 12, beginning of verse 3, then Jeroboam and the whole assembly of Israel came and spoke to Jeroboam, saying, your father made our yoke heavy. Now, therefore, lighten the service of your father and his heavy yoke which he put on us, and we will serve you. The elders who had been advisors in King Solomon's administration suggested to Jeroboam that he serve the people, and then they, in turn, would agree to be his servants. 1 Kings 12:7, and they spoke to him, saying, if you will be a servant to these people today and serve them and answer them and speak good works to them, then they will be your servants forever. Instead, Rehoboam was influenced by his own inexperienced peers and ignored the pleas of the Israelites. 1 Kings 12, beginning verse 10. Then the young men who had grown up with him spoke to him, saying, thus you should speak to this people who have spoken to you, saying, your father made our yoke heavy, but you make it lighter for us. Thus you shall say to them, my little finger shall be thicker than my father's waist. And now, whereas my father put a heavy yoke on you, I will add to your yoke. My father chastised you with whips, but I will chastise you with scourges. Now, you may have noticed that there are words being used in connection with the building of the temple that reflect back to the Israelite slavery in Egypt. The words heavy and service found in 1 Kings 12:4 were also used to describe the bondage of the Israelites under the Egyptians. in Exodus 1:14, and they made their lives bitter with hard bondage, in mortar and brick, and all manner of service in the field. All their service in which they made them serve was with rigor. The description of the 70,000 who carried burdens in 1 Kings 5:15 parallels what Moses noticed when he went out to see his brothers in Exodus 2:11. Now it came to pass in those days when Moses was grown that he went out to his brethren and looked at their burdens, and he saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his brethren. When Solomon died, the Israelites spoke of being under a yoke in 1 Kings 12:4. This was also a term that recalled slavery in Egypt in Leviticus 16:13. And I am Yahuwah, your Elohim, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, that you should not be their slaves. I have broken their bands and your yoke, and made you walk upright. In 1 Kings 5:16, Solomon's advisors are said to have supervised the people, but this is the same Hebrew verb that used to describe how a master should not treat a slave. In Leviticus 25:43, you shall not rule over him with rigor, but you shall fear your Elohim. Solomon built store cities, the same words used to describe the cities built by the Israelite slaves for Pharaoh. 1 Kings 9:19. All the storage cities that Solomon had, cities for his chariots and cities for his cavalry, and whatever Solomon desired to build in Jerusalem, in Lebanon, and on all the land of his dominion. Exodus 1:11. Therefore, they set taskmasters over them to afflict them with their burdens, and they built for Pharaoh supply cities, Pithom and Ramses. Also, like Pharaoh, Solomon had chariots and riders, 1 Kings 9:19. All the storage cities that Solomon had, cities for his chariots and cities for his cavalry, and whatever Solomon desired to build in Jerusalem, in Lebanon, and in all the land of his dominion. Exodus 14:18. Then the Egyptians shall know that I am Yahuwah when I have gained honor for myself over Pharaoh, his chariots, and his horsemen. Quoting Sachs, Ardell says, quoting Jonathan Sachs, he says, without saying so explicitly, indeed at one point denying it, but Solomon did not make slaves of any of the Israelites, 1 Kings 9:22. The Tanakh is hinting that the building of the temple turned Israel into a second Egypt. Solomon was altogether too close to being an Israelite pharaoh. The irony is overwhelming. Solomon was Israel's wisest king. The nation stood at the apex of its power and prosperity. Momentarily, it was at peace. The king was engaged in the holiest of tasks, the one that brought the Exodus narrative to completion. Yet, at that precise moment, the fault line developed that was eventually to bring centuries of tragedy. Why? Because Solomon, in effect, turned the Israelites into a conscripted labor, the very thing they had left Egypt to avoid. On the surface, the text tells another story. Solomon fell from grace because his foreign wives led him astray into idolatry. Yet it was not this that led to the rebellion of the people. No sooner do we understand this than we appreciate the significance of another text. When David first conceived of the plan of building the temple of God, God sent word through the prophet Nathan in 2 Samuel 7, beginning of verse 6. For I have not dwelt in a house since the time that I brought the children of Israel up from Egypt, even to this day, but have moved about in a tent and in a tabernacle. Wherever I have moved about with all the children of Israel, have I ever spoken a word to anyone from the tribes of Israel, whom I commanded to shepherd my people Israel, saying, why have you not built me a house of cedar? There's a hint here that God disclosed to David the danger involved in the project. Only later did it become clear. Even then, Solomon's son could have salvaged the situation, but he listened to the advice of that the elders gave him. There is a profound theological statement here. The free God desires, that doesn't make sense, the free worship of free human beings. As the sages used to say, the Holy One, blessed be He, does not behave tyrannically to His creatures. It was not accidental, but of the essence that the first house of God, small, fragile, portable, and the opposite of the grandeur of the temple, was built by free, uncoerced, voluntary contributions. For God lives not in houses of wood and stone, but in the minds and souls of free human beings. He is to be found not in monumental architecture, but in the willing heart. That's where that quote ends. Ardell picks up, in summary, it was the Father's desire that His dwelling place should be constructed by willing hearts and by the free will of His people. Until those lasting foundations are laid by the Almighty, the simple, portable residence was preferable. Abraham, a tent dweller, understood this and longed for this permanent residence. Hebrews 11, beginning verse 9. By faith, he, Abraham, dwelt in the land of promise as in a foreign country, dwelling in tents, that is, with Isaac and Jacob, the heirs with him of the same promise. For he waited for the city which has foundations, whose builder and maker is Elohim. Today, we have a pretty good understanding that we are individual tabernacles with Yeshua in our hearts. The building of the tabernacle of believers is another story. We must work on that building with loving and giving hearts, always striving for unity. We must make it a place where the Almighty can dwell or rest among us. As we build the tabernacle, we find the tabernacle builds us. We can find another interesting parallel with the story of creation and the building of the tabernacle. Nehemiah Leibowitz notes these similarities as follows. The story of creation. God makes the firmament, the two great lights, the beasts of the field, etc. The building of the tabernacle. Let them make me a sanctuary. They shall make an ark, a table, a lampstand, etc. The story of creation. In 6 days God made heaven and earth. The building of the tabernacle. The essence of the eternal abode on Mount Sinai for 6 days. Exodus 24:16. The story of creation, and God rested on the seventh day, the building of the tabernacle. On the seventh day, God called Moses in Exodus 24:16. The story of creation, God finished the work, the building of the tabernacle. Moses finished the work, Exodus 40, verse 33. The story of creation, God saw all that He made, the building of the tabernacle. Moses saw all the work, Exodus 39:43. The story of creation, and behold, it was very good. The building of the tabernacle, and behold, they had done it as God had commanded Moses, Exodus 39:43. The story of creation, and God blessed the seventh day, the building of the tabernacle, and Moses blessed them, Exodus 39:43. Leibowitz teaches through these parallels that just as the Holy One created a world for us to dwell in, Moses oversaw the building of a place in which the divine presence could dwell. Through the construction of the sanctuary, we become imitators of the Father. As we follow His commands, the heavenly pattern, we create a holy place for Him to dwell in our tabernacle. Now we know that the Almighty is everywhere, yet it is pointed out that if He is everywhere, then how is there room for mankind? And how can we know Him if He is not in our midst? The answers are already hinted at in the chart above. The Almighty reserves a couple of dimensions that He shares with His people. The first is time. The seventh day is spoken of in creation, and later we learn of the significance of the seventh month, the seventh year, the 7 sevens, and the seventh millennium. We can make the choice as to whether we want to meet Him in this dimension of time that He has set up for us. The second dimension is a space. It is pictured by the tabernacle. It is a place where holiness is practiced. It is the place where heaven and earth meet. There are parameters here, and it is a place where the Father rules, not man, operating under His own idea of what truth is. The tabernacle is a model of the kingdom. The pattern of the tabernacle is where His people gather in unity enabling the Almighty to dwell in their midst. Matthew 18:20. For where 2 or 3 are gathered together in my name, I am there in the midst of them. For those of you who enjoy finding the standalone Aleph Tav in the text, we find an interesting appearance in Exodus 25:9. And let them make me a sanctuary that I may dwell among them, according to all that I show you, Aleph Tav, the pattern of the tabernacle and the pattern of all its furnishings, just so you shall make it. Yeshua is the Aleph and the Tav, or in Greek, Alpha and Omega. He is the beginning and the end, the first and the last. Yeshua, together with his unified body, is the pattern of the tabernacle. I would encourage you to check out Brad Scott's tabernacle teachings on his website, wildbranch.org, as he describes each piece of furnishing and its messianic application. Ooh, man, I'm going to have to look that up and see if that's available and make a note for myself here. Post, if I can find a video on it, Brad Scott video on Tabernacle. It might be on YouTube or something like that. I'll have to look and see if I can find it. I've heard some of, quite a few actually, of Brad Scott's teachings, and they are very good. The ones that I saw anyway were outstanding. So I'd be interested to see what he has to say about this for sure. As we read through Yahuwah's instructions to Moses concerning every single item to be made for the tabernacle, we come across a variety of verbs, all in the second person, you. Let's see if I can pronounce these. But sipita, and you shall overlay. Va'asita, and you shall make. Vayatsakta, and you shall cast. Vanatata, and you shall put. Vahavata, and you shall bring. I apologize for you Hebrew speakers out there if I've butchered those. There is one exception to this, and it is found in the instructions for the ark, where the verb switches to the third person plural. They shall make. Exodus 25:10. And they shall make an ark of acacia wood. 2.5 cubits shall be its length, 1.5 cubits its width, and 1.5 cubits its height. The ark is the very first vessel that they are commanded to make. There are 13 verses dealing with the ark, thus it has the most instructions associated with it. This opening verse, 25 verse 10, is the only time that the plural they is used in a command concerning the construction of a vessel of the tabernacle. It is also interesting that as the Torah continues to speak of the ark, it switches back over to the singular. What is special about the ark? The sages say that since the ark contained the tablets of stone given to Moses by Yahuwah on Mount Sinai, everyone was to have a share in the ark. The Torah was the heritage of all. All of Israel was to belong to the covenant, and all were expected to study and know the word. Everyone was to have an equal responsibility when it came to the making of the ark, which kept the word. For some interesting insights on the ark, I'd like to quote from one of Brad Scott's online articles. Ardell quotes, in Hebrew, ark is eran. We would think of it as a chest, for the verbal root of this word is ara, or gathering. In context here, it will be the container or gathering place for the testimony or the word of God to be eventually expressed in the tablets. Aaron is in the feminine gender, and not by coincidence. The bearer of the word of God is always in this gender, beginning with the seed of the woman in Genesis 3:15. The word of God is pictured as a child in a womb to be protected, kept, and nurtured. 5 chapters earlier, God had given his people his word, and now he is giving instructions for a container for his words. It will be a pattern designed to show us where he will dwell. As we will see, there is to be only one vessel in the heart of the sanctuary, the ark. God will design one vessel, which is to teach, guide, and instruct his children, that which houses his eternal words. From God's point of view, this entire structure is constructed around his word. His word was, is, and always will be the center of his will for man. This is the very reason that Yeshua is first introduced to us by John as the Word of God. Again, the Word will be housed for 9 months in a feminine container called Miriam. He will be protected, kept, and nurtured there until this seed bursts forth from the ground for all to see. And once again, the Word of God will be in a tabernacle, a perfect tabernacle. The heavenly structure shown to Moses by God will take upon flesh and Shekan among us. And they shall make an ark of acacia wood, Exodus 25:10a. The ark is to be made of etsei shittim, or shittim wood. This word is sometimes translated as acacia wood, which may or may not be the same word that Yeshua's wreath of thorn was constructed from, the same wood. It also was the thorny branches placed over the sheep pens at night and during the winter months that Yeshua referred to in John 10:8 through 17. This tree grows very deep roots, draws nourishment from deep in the earth, and survives very well in dry ground. This tree is not an attractive tree, such as a mighty oak or a giant redwood. In the Septuagint translation of the Scriptures, Shittim is translated as aphthartos, or incorruptible. So let's summarize. This container for the Word of God is to be made from a tree that has roots that grow from dry ground. For he shall grow up before them like a tender plant, and like a root out of dry ground, Isaiah 53:2. It is an unattractive tree. He hath no form nor comeliness. And when we shall see him, there is no beauty that we should desire him, Isaiah 53:2b. This tree is translated as incorruptible. For such a high priest was fitting for us, who is holy, harmless, undefiled, separate from sinners, and made higher than the heavens, Hebrews 7:26. This shittim wood speaks of the Messiah's perfect humanity. This wood was touched with all that nature could throw against it, as it was and is with all trees, yet remained undefiled and incorruptible. Why? Because it housed the Word of God. That's where Ardell finishes this quote from Brad Scott. Some pretty cool stuff there on the Shittim wood. I'm going to highlight this for my own benefit here so I can remember that one. Pretty cool stuff. The Ark not only housed the Word of Elohim, but it also had a significant cover called the Kaparit, otherwise known as the mercy seat. The root of Kaparit is kapar, and is often translated as atonement. We see in Exodus 25, beginning of verse 17. You shall make a mercy seat of pure gold. 2.5 cubits shall be its length, and 1.5 cubits its width. And you shall make 2 cherubim of gold, of hammered work. You shall make them at the 2 ends of the mercy seat. Make 1 cherub at one end, and the other cherub at the other end, and you shall make the cherubim at the 2 ends of it of one piece with the mercy seat. And the cherubim shall stretch out their wings above, covering the mercy seat. With their wings they shall face one another. The faces of the cherubim shall be toward the mercy seat. You shall put this mercy seat on top of the ark, and in the ark you shall put the testimony that I will give you. And there I will meet with you, and I will speak with you from above the mercy seat, from between the 2 cherubim, which are on the ark of the testimony, and give you all my commands for the children of Israel. The kaparet is the place where the high priest would once a year sprinkle blood in order to atone, kapar, for himself and for the nation of Israel. We see in Leviticus 16, beginning in verse 14, he shall take some of the blood of the bull and sprinkle it with his finger on the mercy seat on the east side, and before the mercy seat he shall sprinkle some of the blood with his finger 7 times. Then he shall kill the goat of the sin offering, which is for the people. Bring its blood inside the veil. Do with that blood as he did with the blood of the bull and sprinkle it on the mercy seat and before the mercy seat. So he shall make atonement for the holy place because of the uncleanness of the children of Israel and because of their transgressions for all their sins. And so he shall do for the tabernacle of meeting, which remains among them in the midst of their uncleanness. There shall be no man in the tabernacle of meeting when he goes in to make atonement in the holy place, until he comes out, that he may make atonement for himself, for his household, and for all the assembly of Israel. Exodus 25:22 indicates that a purpose of the mercy seat was to provide a place for the Almighty to meet with Moses. Specifically, he says he will speak above the mercy seat from between the two cherubim. From these Exodus verses, there appears to be two functions of the ark and its mercy seat. One, the ark is the receptacle of the tablets referred to as the testimony. Exodus 25:21, the ark you shall put the testimony that I will give you. Two, the mercy seat is the place of meeting, Exodus 25:22. And there I will meet with you, and I will speak with you from above the mercy seat, from between the two cherubim which are on the ark. When we consider the tabernacle, we think of its main role having to do with the building or the bringing of sacrifices. However, nowhere is it called the tabernacle of sacrifices. Our first thought is not usually to think of it as the place where the Torah testimony is kept in addition to the meeting place. Yet the importance of the functions of the ark and its kaparet are reflected in two names given to the tabernacle. Tabernacle of Testimony in Numbers 153 and Tent of Meeting in Exodus 29:42 through 44. We can think of the tabernacle as a mini Mount Sinai where the Shekinah glory would meet with Moses and continue with the testimony of the Torah, Exodus 25:22. And there I will meet with you, and I will speak with you from above the mercy seat, from between the two cherubim, which are on the ark of the testimony, and give you all my commands for the children of Israel. Here's just one more interesting little thing that ties the ark together with the tabernacle numerically. Tabernacle of Testimony in Bamidbar 153 is numerically adds up to 400 plus 6 plus 4 plus 70 plus 5 plus 50 plus 20 plus 300 plus 40 equals 895. That's the numerical value of all of the Hebrew letters that make up the Hebrew phrase Tabernacle of Testimony. It adds up to 895. Ark of the Covenant of Elohim in Deuteronomy 31:9. If you look at all the Hebrew letters, take the numerical value of all the Hebrew letters, you end up with 5 plus 6 plus 5 plus 10 plus 400 plus 10 plus 200 plus 2 plus 50 plus 6 plus 200 plus 1 equals 895. So it has the same numerical value. The poles affixed to the ark, also made of acacia wood covered in gold, which shall not move from it, represent its constant readiness to be carried upon human shoulders. If the ark represents the word of Elohim and Yeshua, who is the word of Elohim made flesh, then the poles point to two factions of Israel who are partners in the covenant. Is this a picture of Judah and Ephraim coming together in unity, carrying the Torah and the Messiah? The ark being carried on human shoulders gives the appearance of being yoked. Matthew 11, beginning in verse 28. Come to me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Unity is pictured as the brothers carry the ark. We also see unity in another verse in chapter 26. Let me translate as literally as I can. Exodus 26:6. You shall make 50 hooks of gold, and you shall join the curtains, each to her sister, by the hooks, and it shall be one, akkad, tabernacle. The first mention of the number 50 takes us back to the city of Sodom, where 50 righteous men would have spared the city from destruction. Thus, the number 50 can be understood to be symbolic of righteous men who preserve the unrighteous. Righteous people hold the tabernacle together as one. Their job is to join the tribes, curtains of Israel back together, for a divided house cannot stand. The Hebrew word join, kavar, is also very significant. It is used to describe Jerusalem in Psalm 122, verse 3. Jerusalem is built as a city that is joined, kavar, united as one. Therefore, the tabernacle can be compared to a mobile Jerusalem. And look where else a form of this word, join, kavar, or kaver, shows up. It's in Ezekiel 37, beginning of verse 15. Again, the word of Yahuwah came to me, saying, As for you, son of man, take a stick for yourself and write on it, for Judah and for the children of Israel, his companions. Kaver. Then take another stick and write on it for Joseph, the stick of Ephraim, and for all the house of Israel, his companions, Kaver. Then join them one to another for yourself into one stick, and they will become one, Echad, in your hand. The tabernacle is meant to reflect the Almighty's dwelling place on earth, and since his desire is to dwell in our midst when we come together as united Israel, we will have constructed the tabernacle. 1 Peter 2:5. You also, as living stones, are being built up a spiritual house, a holy priesthood, to offer up spiritual sacrifices acceptable to Yah through Yeshua the Messiah. I just have one more thing that I find very interesting, because it hints at the ubiquitous sun worship that has plagued the Father's people from the beginning. The entrance to the tabernacle was on the eastern side, and the Holy of Holies was positioned on the western side of the courtyard. We know that the Torah's focus is to eliminate idolatry so that we can serve the one true Elohim. In ancient times, the sun was idolized as a god more often than anything else. As a result, the tabernacle is set up so that when you enter the courtyard, you are walking west with your back to the sun, emphasizing that the sun is not a god. This openly went against the pagan beliefs of that time. It is also interesting to note that the continual sacrifice was offered on the northwest corner of the altar in the morning, and on the northwest corner in the afternoon, always facing away from the sun. Cool, huh? Yeah, I think that's way cool, actually. It makes me think of why God was so upset that the priests were in the temple facing the east and doing stuff in honor of Tammuz, when everything's designed for us to be looking west in the tabernacle here, in the temple. The things that you find most confusing in the Torah usually point directly to Yeshua. For the sages who openly rejected him, they sometimes give bizarre explanations for various verses. We need to be like the cherubim on the ark. We need to look face to face with our brothers and become one. That will be the unity required for the Almighty to meet with us in power and glory. This is also the testimony that the world needs in order to believe in the Messiah. Yeshua prayed for us this way in John 17, beginning of verse 20. I do not pray for these alone, but also for those who will believe in me through their words. That would be you and us, you and I. That would be us, right? That they all may be one, as you, Father, are in me, and I in you. That they also may be one in us, that the world may believe that you sent me. And the glory which you gave me, I have given them, that they may be one, just as we are one. I and them, and you and me. That they may be made perfect in me, and that the world may know that you have sent me, and have loved them as you have loved me. And that's where Ardell finishes his commentary from 2009 on this particular portion of Scripture of the Torah. And I don't see anybody calling in here, so I'll tell you what, let's just go ahead then and listen to the portion from the prophets for this week's study. Let me see if I can pull that up here. We'll be looking at 1 Kings chapter 5, verse 12 through chapter 6, verse 13. Here we go.
1 Kings 5. And Hiram, king of Tyre, sent his servants unto Solomon.
for he had heard that they had anointed him king in the room of his father. For Hiram was ever a lover of David. And Solomon sent to Hiram, saying,
Thou knowest how that David my father could not build an house unto the name of the Lord his God, for the wars which were about him on every side, until the Lord put them under the soles of his feet. But now the Lord my God hath given me rest on every side, so that there is neither adversary nor evil occurrent. And behold, I purpose to build an house unto the name of the Lord my God, as the Lord spake unto David my father, saying, Thy son, whom I will set upon thy throne in thy room, he shall build an house unto my name. Now therefore, command thou that they hew me cedar trees out of Lebanon, and my servants shall be with thy servants. And unto thee will I give hire for thy servants, according to all that thou shalt appoint. For thou knowest that there is not among us any that can skill to hew timber like unto the Sidonians.
And it came to pass, when Hiram heard the words of Solomon, that he rejoiced greatly, and said,
Blessed be the Lord this day, which hath given unto David a wise son over this great people.
And Hiram sent to Solomon, saying,
I have considered the things which thou sentest to me for, and I will do all thy desire concerning timber of cedar, and concerning timber of fir. My servants shall bring them down from Lebanon unto the sea, and I will convey them by sea in floats unto the place that thou shalt appoint me, and will cause them to be discharged there. And thou shalt receive them, and thou shalt accomplish my desire in giving food for my household.
So Hiram gave Solomon cedar trees and fir trees according to all his desire. And Solomon gave Hiram 20,000 measures of wheat for food to his household, and 20 measures of pure oil. Thus gave Solomon to Hiram year by year. And the Lord gave Solomon wisdom, as he promised him. And there was peace between Hiram and Solomon, and they two made a league together. And King Solomon raised a levy out of all Israel, and the levy was 30,000 men. And he sent them to Lebanon, 10,000 a month by courses. A month they were in Lebanon, and 2 months at home. And Adoniram was over the levy. And Solomon had 70,000 that bare burdens, and 80,000 hewers in the mountains. Beside the chief of Solomon's officers, which were over the work, 3,300, which ruled over the people that wrought in the work. And the king commanded, and they brought great stones, costly stones, and hewed stones, to lay the foundation of the house. And Solomon's builders and Hiram's builders did hew them, and the stone squarers. So they prepared timber and stones to build the house. Chapter 6. And it came to pass in the 480th year after the children of Israel were come out of the land of Egypt, in the 4th year of Solomon's reign over Israel, in the month Ziph, which is the 2nd month, that he began to build the house of the Lord. And the house which King Solomon built for the Lord, the length thereof was 80 cubits, and the breadth thereof 20 cubits, and the height thereof 30 cubits. And the porch before the temple of the house, 20 cubits was the length thereof, according to the breadth of the house. And 10 cubits was the breadth thereof before the house. And for the house he made windows of narrow lights. And against the wall of the house he built chambers round about, against the walls of the house round about, both of the temple and of the oracle. And he made chambers round about. The nethermost chamber was 5 cubits broad, and the middle was 6 cubits broad, and the third was 7 cubits broad. For without in the wall of the house he made narrowed rests round about, that the beams should not be fastened in the walls of the house. And the house, when it was in building, was built of stone, made ready before it was brought thither, so that there was neither hammer, nor axe, nor any tool of iron heard in the house, while it was in building. The door for the middle chamber was in the right side of the house. And they went up with winding stairs into the middle chamber, and out of the middle into the third. So he built the house and finished it, and covered the house with beams and boards of cedar. And then he built chambers against all the house, 5 cubits high. And they rested on the house with timber of cedar. And the word of the Lord came to Solomon, saying,
Concerning this house which thou art in building, if thou wilt walk in my statutes and execute my judgments, and keep all my commandments to walk in them, Then will I perform my word with thee, which I spake unto David thy father, and I will dwell among the children of Israel.
Okay, that concludes our portion from the prophets. If you have anything you would like to contribute to the discussion, give me a call, 619-789-6815. I'll put that number in the chat room again, 619-789-6815. Now, the normal portion actually starts in verse 12, but I wanted to include verses 1 through 11, so I added that to it in the audio there. But I've always been fascinated by the difference between the tabernacle in the wilderness and the temples that followed, Solomon's temple and the one later, and of course what Herod did to the temple, and even the temple that was going to be built in the last days. First of all, Solomon's temple is like totally different dimensions, way bigger than the tabernacle that was in the wilderness. And this talks about, in the verses we just looked at here, talks about, first of all, Hiram's involvement here. And if you've ever studied anything on the Illuminati and Freemasonry, you'll know that the Freemasons just love Solomon's temple, Jacob and Boaz and Hiram Abiff and all that stuff. I mean, they're obsessed with it. And I always wondered about that. I'm like, what is the deal? Why do the Masons love Solomon and his temple so much? And, I look at this, and even as the commentary we just read pointed out, there's things that were done wrong regarding this building and how it was built and who built it and whatnot. And our portion stopped short in chapter 6, verse 13. But I want to read something that I wrote in a blog called Concerned with Saturn. I'll post the link if you want to read the whole blog for yourself. But it's toward the bottom, about the last 25% of the article or so. I was looking at all of this a couple of years ago when I was doing some more research on the Nephilim and whatnot. And let's see, I'm going to back up to there's a lot of wild stuff surrounding the Star of Remphan. The Star of David is really, I believe, the Star of Remphan that Stephen talked about in the book of Acts, chapter 7, and how it's been around in the Seal of Solomon. There's all kinds of stuff there you can check out. Let me scroll down to the part where he gets to the temple here. Okay, let's see. I'll go to this part right here. Immediately after King David died, his son Solomon became king of Israel. Right after that, the scriptures tell us in 1 Kings 3:1, Solomon made an alliance with Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, and married one of his daughters. He brought her to live in the city of David until he could finish building his palace and the temple of the Lord and the wall around the city. It was after doing this that God appeared to Solomon and granted his request for wisdom. He should have used that wisdom more wisely. Although he loved the Lord in the beginning of his reign, he turned away from the true path as he grew older. We see in 1 Kings 11, 1 through 9, it says, Now King Solomon loved many foreign women. Besides Pharaoh's daughter, he married women from Moab, Ammon, Edom, Sidon, and from among the Hittites. The Lord had clearly instructed the people of Israel, you must not marry them because they will turn your hearts to their gods. Yet Solomon insisted on loving them anyway. He had 700 wives of royal birth and 300 concubines. And in fact, they did turn his heart away from the Lord. In Solomon's old age, they turned his heart to worship other gods instead of being completely faithful to the Lord his God as his father David had been. Solomon worshipped Ashtoreth, the goddess of the Sidonians, and Moloch, the detestable god of the Ammonites. Just like our presidents do, by the way. Our presidents worship Moloch in the forest of the Bohemian Grove. But that's another story. In this way, Solomon did what was evil in the Lord's sight. He refused to follow the Lord completely, as his father David had done. On the Mount of Olives, east of Jerusalem, he even built a pagan shrine for Shamash, the detestable god of Moab, and another for Moloch, the detestable god of the Ammonites. Solomon built such shrines for all his foreign wives to use for burning incense and sacrificing to their gods. The Lord was very angry with Solomon, for his heart had turned away from the Lord, the God of Israel, who had appeared to him twice. So that's 1 Kings 11, 1 through 9. Backing up a bit, we can see how this happened. In 1 Kings 7, it's the chapter that tells us that Solomon hired Hiram of Tyre, an area known for Baal worship, to build the temple of God. That always made me curious. Chapter 8 goes on to describe the completion of the temple and Solomon's prayer of dedication. The next chapter reveals God's acceptance of all that Solomon had came with a warning. In 1 Kings 9, 3 through 7, it says, "The Lord said to him, I have heard your prayer and your petition. I have set this temple apart to be holy, this place you have built where my name shall be honored forever. I will always watch over it, for it is dear to my heart. As for you, if you will follow me with integrity and godliness, as David your father did, obeying all my commands, decrees, and regulations, then I will establish the throne of your dynasty over Israel forever. For I made this promise to your father David, one of your descendants will always sit on the throne of Israel. But if you or your descendants abandon me and disobey the commands and decrees I have given you, and if you serve and worship other gods, then I will uproot Israel from this land that I have given them. I will reject this temple that I have made holy to honor my name. I will make Israel an object of mockery and ridicule among the nations." I've always wondered about this because, again, the temple is so totally different from the tabernacle in the wilderness, and it's built by a guy who, as I understand it, had just built the temple of Zeus in Lebanon before that, and I talk about a little bit how much, 666 talents of gold to build this thing. I mean, there's lots of stuff about this temple that just, to me, just don't add up to being godly, but at this time when the temple is built, the best I can understand it, God is honoring the promise that he made to David, regarding the fact that Solomon would be able to build his temple. And he's honoring Solomon's heart at this time, because Solomon at this time, his heart is still right. And if you read Solomon's prayer of dedication, it really is quite beautiful. But you see, the only thing that made this structure holy was the fact that God put his name on it based on some caveats. Like, okay, I like what you've done here. This is great. If you continue to honor me, I'll put my name on this thing you've built. And he said, I will reject this temple that I have made holy to honor my name. The only thing that was holy about the temple is the fact that God put his name on it and had declared it holy, but with a caveat to it. So I go on to say, it is clear from the above passage that it was God who made the temple of Solomon holy. That appears to be in spite of how it was built and by whom. That same chapter goes on to say that it took 20 years to build a temple and Solomon's royal palace. It was built by forced labor. Who was forced to build these things? Now, in the commentary we just read, they note about how the Israelites were forced, and I understand the part that the Israelites did play, but when you look at 1 Kings 9, verses 20 and 21, you get a different picture here. It says, who was forced to build these things? There, in 1 Kings 9, 20 through 21, there were still some people living in the land who were not Israelites, including Amorites, Hittites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites. Uh-oh, ding, ding, ding. Those are the guys that God said consistently throughout the Torah, utterly destroy them, totally wipe them out. Women, children, animals, everything, utterly destroy it all. And I think I've shown through my research that these were Nephilim. And so when I saw it, I'm like, whoa, hold on a second here. You telling me Nephilim built the temple? Well, that's what it looks like to me. It says, these were descendants of the nations whom the people of Israel had not completely destroyed. They were leftovers. You know, we know that Joshua failed to get them all. And apparently David did too, because here's some of them here during the reign of Solomon. And the scriptures tell us that, 1 Kings 9, 20 and 21, these were descendants of the nations whom the people of Israel had not completely destroyed. So Solomon conscripted them for his labor force, and they serve in the labor force to this day. Notice that it says that these were the descendants of the nations whom the people of Israel had not completely destroyed. Those were Nephilim nations. Remember what I wrote in the Building a Pure Nation blog, and there's a link there if you want to check that out. Those nations came from the giant descendants of Canaan. That essentially means Solomon had Nephilim and demons build the temple and his palace through forced labor. And here's yet another interesting piece of the puzzle in 1 Kings 10. The Queen of Sheba pays him a visit. After that, enormous wealth begins to pour into Solomon's kingdom. But notice how things start to go bad. 1 Kings 10, verse 14. The weight of the gold that Solomon received was 666 talents. I had already known about the demons built the Temple of Solomon theory based on other research I had done regarding the 72 goetic demons spoken of in the Lesser Key of Solomon. In the apocryphal book, Testament of Solomon, the text reads very similar to the plot for Lord of the Rings trilogy. In that apocryphal text, Solomon is given a ring of power, supposedly by the good Archangel Michael, though I suspect, assuming there's any truth to this, that it really came from Lucifer as Saturn. Verse 5 of the text says, actually I'm not going to read all that, but you can read that if you're interested in it. Anyway, I've always been fascinated by the contrast in how the tabernacle is built and by whom versus the temples and by whom. Something there. There's more to it that I haven't figured out yet, but I'm just kind of thinking out loud here because nobody's calling me. But anyway, if you've got any thoughts, give me a call, 619-789-6815. If I don't hear from anybody, we'll probably bring this show to a close pretty early here. Actually, I'll probably do that anyway because I got stuff I got to do tomorrow before Sabbath begins. So I don't really have much more to say on the prophets portion. So let's go ahead and listen to the New Testament portion.
Matthew 5.
Again, ye have heard that it hath been said by them of old time, Thou shalt not forswear thyself, but shalt perform unto the Lord thine oaths. But I say unto you, swear not at all, neither by heaven, for it is God's throne, nor by the earth, for it is his footstool, neither by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great King. Neither shalt thou swear by thy head, because thou canst not make one hair white or black. But let your communication be, yea, yea, nay, nay, for whatsoever is more than these cometh of evil.
Hebrews 8.
Now of the things which we have spoken, this is the sum. We have such an high priest, who is set on the right hand of the throne of the majesty in the heavens, a minister of the sanctuary, and of the true tabernacle, which the Lord pitched, and not man. For every high priest is ordained to offer gifts and sacrifices, wherefore it is of necessity that this man have somewhat also to offer. For if he were on earth, he should not be a priest, seeing that there are priests that offer gifts according to the law, who serve unto the example and shadow of heavenly things, as Moses was admonished of God when he was about to make the tabernacle. For, see, saith he, that thou make all things according to the pattern showed to thee in the mount. But now hath he obtained a more excellent ministry, by how much also he is the mediator of a better covenant, which was established upon better promises. Chapter 9. It was therefore necessary that the patterns of things in the heavens should be purified with these, but the heavenly things themselves with better sacrifices than these. For Christ is not entered into the holy places made with hands, which are the figures of the true, but into heaven itself, now to appear in the presence of God for us. Chapter 10. For the law having a shadow of good things to come, and not the very image of the things, can never, with those sacrifices which they offered year by year, continually make the comers thereunto perfect.
All right, and that's all we have for the New Testament portion. I don't really have much to add to that, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap this one up tonight. I'm going to post, I'm going to see if I can find the Brad Scott video and post them in the show notes, and I'll also cut and paste the section from my blog concerned with Saturn that I read in the show notes. And as soon as Blog Talk gets my this show processed, I'll put the audio from the show there too. So we'll have it all ready for you if you want to pass it along to somebody else, or if you want to listen to it again. All right, so that's all we have for tonight. Be blessed, everybody. Have a great weekend. Have a good night. Bye.